Namaste friends, I thought I will make a video on anatomy of fate, describing more about Saturn. Our goal today is to look beyond the common fear associated with Saturn and instead decode Saturn's role as a fundamental architect of existence. We will explore Saturn not just through abstract symbols but as an astronomical, biological and astronomical astrological blueprint. We will learn why he's the last visible planet, how he dictates the very breath in our lungs, and the specific ways his placement in your chart defines the shadow you can carry from past lives. Uh, while this subject is complex, we will derive every concept from the fundamental principles of Shastras to show that Saturn's strictness is actually the boundary that allows life to exist. The Jyotisha says we recognize Saturn as the cosmic border guard. He is the last of the Tara Grahas or moving stars that can be seen from the Earth with the naked eye. Astronomically, this is significant because the eye of the Sun, the reach of visible light and consciousness, ends at Saturn's orbit. This is why traditional Vedic astrology, following the teachings of Maharishi Parashar, does not typically consider planets beyond Saturn. They exist in the unseen, beyond the natural limit of human vision. This boundary is known as the 10th house limit. If you imagine sitting on the earth and looking straight up, the 10th house represents the highest point in the sky. Saturn rules this limit, marking the very edge of the visible universe and the physical boundary of our reality. Beyond Saturn lies the mist from which we emerge and darkness to which we eventually return. Saturn stands at the gate, ensuring that everything with your physical experience adheres to the laws of time and space. When you look at Saturn, you're looking at the furthest point your physical eyes can reach before the soul enters the realm of the infinite. The night sky matrix, Sthira versus Chara. To understand Saturn, we must first understand how movement in the night sky dictates the creation of life, a quality known as Rajas. When we look at the stars, we see two distinct categories, Sthira, fixed, and Chara, moving. The fixed stars are the nakshatras, which remain stationary in their relative positions. The moving stars are the grahas or planets which travel across the backdrop of nakshatras. This celestial division manifests on Earth through different kingdoms of life. The planet kingdom is ruled by Mercury, Buddha, and Earth element Prithvi. Just as nakshatras are fixed in the sky, trees and plants are fixed in the ground. They cannot walk or move on of their own volition. Conversely, the animal kingdom, which includes humans, is ruled by Venus, Shukra, and the water element Jala. Mobility begins with water. It allows us to move, flow, and navigate the world. While Mercury's Rajas creates the stationary life of the forest, Venus's Rajas creates the mobile life of animals. Understanding this night sky matrix helps us to see that our mobility as humans is a gift of the moving planets, while our physical grounding is a reflection of the fixed stars. When we are looking away from the Sun, we encounter a sequence of three planets that serve as the divine architects of our incarnation: Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. In this blueprint of existence, Saturn acts as Brahma, the creator. Because he is the furthest visible planet, we say we emerge from the unseen mist beyond his orbit into the physical world. Saturn provides the most fundamental requirement for life, the physical body itself. Once Saturn has provided the vessel, that is the body, Jupiter acts as Vishnu, the sustainer. Jupiter grants the soul or the Atma and the vital life force necessary to sustain the body over time. Finally, Mars acts as Rudra, the destroyer. Mars provides the active mind, the destroying mind that is constantly in motion, making decisions, and eventually leading us toward the end of our physical cycle. This sequence is essential. First, a body is created by Brahma, represented by Saturn. Then it is animated by the soul from Vishnu, represented by Jupiter. And finally, it is given a mind to act in the world by Rudra, Mars. Understanding this hierarchy helps us realize that Saturn isn't just a bringer of sorrow, he is the very giver of the human body. The elemental hierarchy, tattvas, the five elements of tattvas, from an ascending hierarchy of density that mirrors the order of planets from the Sun. At the densest level is Mercury, ruling the earth element Prithvi. Like solid rock, it's closely packed and immobile. Above that is Venus, ruling water, Jala, where the mobility begins as the atoms loosen. Next is Mars, ruling fire, Agni, representing the highly mobile energy of light and heat. Saturn sits above these, ruling the air element, Vayu. Saturn governs the wind, the atmosphere, and most importantly, our breath. Finally, at the top of the hierarchy is Jupiter, ruling ether or Akash, representing the magnetic field and pure space that holds all other elements. Saturn's association with the air element is its most critical biological role. Saturn dictates the atmospheric quota, the specific amount of air, the number of breaths we are allowed to consume in this lifetime. By understanding this elemental structure, we see that Saturn is literally the planet that keeps us breathing, managing the invisible fuel that sustain our physical form. The mechanics of longevity, Vayu, air, minus V, Ayu, that is longevity. There's a profound linguistic and biological secret to longevity. Vayu, air, minus the letter V equals to Ayu, longevity. This simple formula reveals why Saturn is Ayushkaraka, the significator of longevity. We are only alive as long as we have Vayu or breath in our lungs. Saturn grants every human a specific breath quota at birth. For example, a certain number of millions of breaths. The mechanics of how we use this quota involve the interaction between Saturn, air, and Mars, fire. The fire of Mars, Agni, located in the navel, creates a vacuum that pulls Saturn's air, Vayu, down into the lungs. If the stomach becomes too cold, this fire dims and the breathing process begins to fail. Furthermore, how we breathe determines how long we live. Fast, anxious breathing, driven by a negative Saturn or stress, depletes our quota rapidly. Conversely, calm meditation stretches the quota, allowing us to live longer. Saturn is the ultimate timekeeper. Saturn doesn't just watch the clock, he watches your lungs. The planets act as governors over the body's energy centers or chakras, and Saturn sits in the Ajna chakra, the mind's eye. The primary objective of the center is to transform ignorance into knowledge, because Saturn rules this space of perception. He governs tapasya and hard mental labor. He is the worker who does not complain, the one who is willing to put the mental fatigue necessary to truly master a subject. A positive Saturn in a person's life manifests as someone who delights in tireless work and takes full responsibility for their actions. They are like Hanuman, superb in their duties and unshakable in their discipline. That's why when we offer prayers to Hanuman on Saturday, the Saturn strengthens. However, a negative Saturn manifests as a lazy person who shrinks from responsibility or attempts to hide from hard work of the mind. By placing Saturn at Ajna Chakra, the Shastras teach us that the path to spiritual awakening isn't just about light, it's about the grit, discipline, and tireless effort required to see through the shadows of our own ignorance. Chaya, this is a vital concept, the exaltation of the shadow. As long as you have a shadow, you are alive. The day you wake up and have no shadow is the day you have left your physical body. Your shadow defines your physical existence and your connection to the earth. The length and the strength of the shadow changes throughout the day, which explains Saturn's astrological strengths. At sunrise, the shadow is at absolute longest, stretching towards the west because sun rises in the east, which corresponds to the 7th house, opposite house to the 1st house. This is why Saturn is exalted in Libra, the 7th sign, and possesses Digbala, directional strength, in the west. At this time, Saturn is the most faithful, following you. At noon, the shadow is the smallest, hiding beneath your feet, as Vishnu, purity, rules the midday sky. Finally, at the sunset, the shadow falls to the east, towards the Lagna, the 1st house. Because the light is fading, Saturn in the Lagna represents the end of the day, and symbolically, Saturn is also debilitated in the Kalapurusha 1st house Kundali, the first house of Mesha Rashi. Understanding this exaltation of the shadow helps us how Saturn tracks our karma from the moment we rise until our final sunset. Saturn's chart placement matrix. Saturn's impact on your life depends heavily on which house Saturn occupies in your birth chart. First, Saturn thrives in the Upachayas, the 3rd, the 6th, the 10th, and the 11th houses. These are houses of growth through effort, aligning perfectly with Saturn's nature as Brahma, the creator. Here, his demand for hard work leads to high and favorable success. The 8th house is a paradox. While the 8th house is often feared as the house of death, Saturn here grants immense longevity. He is the hand of God in this house, often allowing a person to inherit the long lifespan of their ancestors. However, this long life is frequently paired with deep sorrow or chronic challenges. Finally, the 12th house is known as the void. Saturn here can lead to depression, a loss of sleep, and a mind that feels burdened by deep, superficial thoughts. The primary remedy for troubled 12th house Saturn is fasting on Masik Shivaratri to claim the mind and to surrender the void to Lord Shiva. The retrograde reversal. When a planet is retrograde, Vakra, it undergoes powerful energetic shift, behaving as if it were sitting in the exact opposite sign from its actual position. For Saturn, this reversal has significant real-world implications. In a career context, a retrograde Saturn often troubles a person at work, forcing them into positions of humility and preventing them from easily reaching the top until they have learned certain lessons. However, the most extraordinary application of this reversal occurs in the 8th house of death. If Saturn is retrograde here, the reversal is literal. It becomes resurrection because the 8th house represents the end. A reversed end means you simply refuse to die. There are cases where individuals with this placement have been thought dead only to get up from the grave and walk back. It's a powerful testament to Saturn's role as the master of longevity. Even when the world thinks the quota is finished, a retrograde Saturn can flip the script and grant a second lease on life. The central theme of this discussion is that Saturn is not evil. He is simply the strict, uncompromising boundary keeper of our physical existence across 3 dimensions: astronomy, biology, and astrology. In astronomy, he is the boundary, marking the absolute limit of what our physical eyes can see and define, and defining the scope of our visible universe. In biology, he is the breath, managing our finite atmospheric quota of Vayu and dictating exactly how long our physical body can operate. In astrology, he is the shadow, the inescapable cosmic reflection of our past. Saturn does not create sorrow out of malice, he creates the precise karma and sorrow carried over from previous lives. If you gave sorrow to others in a past life, Saturn ensures you experience that same weight now, so that the scales of the universe remain balanced. He is like a strict teacher. He only follows the path you have already walked. By understanding these 3 pillars, we move from fearing Saturn to respecting the vital structure he provides for our soul's journey. Navigating the mighty Saturn. While a strong Saturn brings suffering and discipline, he also holds the keys to mastery and spiritual liberation. There are 2 primary ways to navigate Saturn's energy. The first is through tireless action, embodying the energy of Hanuman. Saturn demands tapasya, hard, uncomplaining work. When you delight in your duties and embrace discipline without grievance, you pacify Saturn's demand for effort and transform your labor into a path of mastery. The second path is through stretching, the breath, via Turiya, midnight meditation. Since anxiety and stress deplete your breath quota, slowing the breath is essential for longevity and peace. By meditating at midnight, the time of the deepest shadow, you slow your physical consumption of Vayu and merge your internal light with Lord Shiva. In this stillness, you are not just stretching your physical life, you're learning to transcend Saturn's boundaries entirely. Do not fear the shadow, work with it, breathe through it, and eventually you'll find the light that exists beyond the cosmic border guard. Thank you for staying with me till the end on this presentation of the great and mighty Saturn.